Property Patriot, you are cleared hot.
Have you ever thought about owning a boutique hotel? Today our guest is Blake Dailey. Blake is an Air Force Academy graduate, former football player, who started out in the single-family space and then moved into owning his own boutique hotels. Find out how he started in real estate and how working with others helped him grow in the space. Find out all that and more today, where we provide real estate investors with the tools to achieve generational wealth. I'm your host, Bud Evans, the Property Patriot, and this is the Aim High Podcast, show number 34. Greetings, high flyers, and welcome to the Aim High Podcast. Today I'm joined by Blake Lively. How are you today, Blake?
Blake Lively. I'm doing good. I got a new movie coming up.
Oh my goodness. Blake Dailey.
There we go.
Sorry, man.
I was wondering if you'd catch it.
I didn't even realize I said it.
No, it's all right. I guess that means I'm married to Ryan Gosling, so I got pretty good taste. It's like one drink of his new aviation American gin is like one of the new Bud Light drinks.
Oh, goodness. All right, let's get into it while we're talking. So, Blake, let's go right into an introduction, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I'm Blake Lively or Blake Dailey, whatever the day brings, whatever sounds good.
I have no idea.
Short-term rental and boutique hotel investor, Air Force officer, still active in the Air Force. Started my investing career in Panama City after a Category 5 hurricane. So I learned a lot real quick with renovating hurricane damaged homes, and then just stepped that up, doing bigger and bigger projects onto hotels. And now just recently sold that business to my partner and looking at new horizons. So excited for what comes next and for the next phase of finding new hotel projects and building out the hospitality brand.
Awesome, man. So I've got to ask, because when somebody finds out you're in the Air Force, the first thing they say is, do you fly jets?
Every time they're like, oh, what do you fly? I'm like, a desk. I fly a desk. I push paperwork, an acquisitions officer. So cost, schedule, budget, and buying things for the Air Force.
And I did a little bit of time in contracts management when I was enlisted. And it's a great addition to your repertoire when you're working in this career field. And this career field, listen, I'm going back to the military.
Yeah,
when you're in this industry in real estate. Yeah.
Yeah, it's good for real estate, I think. Learn to deal with contractors, learn how to deal with big budgets. Just managing a $5 million contract makes you that much more comfortable, just a little bit more comfortable with buying a $5 million property. I see these figures before. It's nothing out of my norm, completely different, but at least build some confidence, if nothing else.
You're in the Air Force Academy, you're playing football, you're making the transition to active duty military officer. How did you get into real estate?
I think sometime like over one of my Christmas breaks, one of the things I like to do is just walk through Barnes and Noble and see whatever book calls me. I've always been a decent reader, but picked up Rich Dad Poor Dad, and was a management major at the academy, did business classes and competed in business competitions in high school. So I always wanted to start my own business and be an entrepreneur. I just didn't know what. And then I read Rich Dad Poor Dad. I was like, oh, real estate sounds pretty good. I get the time freedom. You get all these other benefits and build up cash flow and can be passive in your business. So I was like, oh man, that sounds pretty cool. So towards the end of my time at the academy, started reading a lot, got into Bigger Pockets, read some of Brandon Turner's books about managing rental properties and buying rental properties. All right, this is what we're going to do. Learned about the VA house hack and just started preparing and putting the pieces in place to use that as soon as we could. And that's how we got into real estate with our VA loan in Panama City when we got stationed there. And at the same time, learned how to, I don't know if I learned all the way how to, but like direct to seller marketing and just write handwritten notes. And that kind of helped build us a little bit faster and get the cash with doing like wholesales and flips to be able to buy more rentals. So just dove right in. Like I just studied just enough to be dangerous and just took the plunge.
You read Rich Dad Poor Dad. Did you have a mentor, or did you just dive right in and I'm going to buy a rental property and let's go?
Yeah, just dove right in. I was really lucky getting in that I got on Bigger Pockets and found a real estate agent who's a broker now in the area, knew the market, knew all the players, the title companies, the lenders that I needed to close that first deal. So he guided me through that first one, and was traveling after our wedding and after the honeymoon. We were in Europe. I found this property with an extra kitchen because we couldn't find any like duplexes or fourplexes, a competitive market after the hurricane, because the housing supply was really down because most of them got damaged. So we planned on house hacking. That was the goal. And then found this house with an extra kitchen that turned out to be a mother-in-law suite. So used the VA loan on that. And he walked me through that purchase and dove in from there. And then while we were living in the temporary lodging on base before he closed that house. That's when we started doing the direct to seller marketing. Like my wife would put on the envelopes and the return address on all the envelopes, and I would write the handwritten letters and put the to address, and then we'd put, at the beginning it was like 20 and then the 25 and then 50 and then 100 at a time, and got a few deals after that. So just learned it all at once, just from a fire hose.
So let's talk about your rental portfolio right now. What are you at right now as far as number?
So total, I think I was at like 151 or 152 doors across an apartment complex and all my boutique hotels, but just recently sold the boutique hotel business. So that took out like 67 units. So now it's around like 80 with my 15 personal listings, one boutique hotel that I own myself, and the rest of the houses that are short-term rentals as well. And still that apartment complex that I'm a GP on.
Awesome. But still, that's a great number.
Yeah, it's respectable, I guess. It's I try to focus like less on the unit count and more of, to me, I think it's more of especially in the short-term rental space, like a revenue number that you need to hit to be able to like cover all the costs you have. It's a high fixed cost business and a lot of payroll and overhead there. So really try to focus on like the revenue and really what that translates into the net cash flow and like those goals that we're trying to hit. So I think when you hear like 85 units, oh, that's crazy. But we bought most of those in like 5 purchases, which makes it a lot easier. So I wasn't going through 85 transactions and doing all that. So that's why I like the bigger deals, commercial stuff.
Yeah, exactly. It's one of the reasons that we started moving towards it. We were doing single family homes, and then just like that, we had 30 doors. So
yeah, you kind of find the limitations with doing all the transactions, all the underwriting, all the deal sourcing. It can be a lot with single family.
Awesome. So let's talk about that first deal. We already know how you sourced it, yet you used an agent for that, but what were the numbers like?
That one, the purchase price was $207,500. So it was original list price was, I think, $205, and we did the whole, because I didn't want to pay the closing costs. I was like, a new kid fresh out of college was like, I need to be in for the lowest amount down. So we negotiated $2,500 of closing costs paid by the seller, and then just made that extra $2,500 on top of the purchase price because I was getting lent on it. 0% down, 30-year finance, that 3.25 at the time or something like that. So I was like, that's incremental and not going to really change the cash flow at all. And my goal on that was just to hopefully break even with the PITI, like the principal, interest, taxes, and insurance that I need to pay. But we actually ended up with that first one. We did a short-term rental with that mother-in-law suite that was attached to our house. And we actually cash flowed, like we had about $100 of net cash flow, like on an annual average. So I was like, man, we're living for free and getting paid thanks to the VA loan, which was great. It takes out the risks and never paid that mortgage on that house, and still have house active everywhere we've lived. So I stayed mortgage free for the most part, other than the good debt of our rental properties. So yeah, it was a good first deal to get in and learn the ropes, learn Airbnb a little bit. We did everything ourselves, like self-manage, even cleaned it sometimes, which was, I'd not recommend. Find a cleaner as soon as possible, a good one who could step in and help so you're not in there scrubbing the floors. But yeah, overall good experience. Found it on the MLS, furnished it. My wife and I did all that ourselves, and then just ran it as a short-term rental.
That's great. Now, has it been all smooth sailing, or did you run into any rough patches with any of the purchases you made?
Ooh, definitely would not say all smooth sailing. I think anybody who's gone through more than a couple transactions plus renovations, mostly on the renovation side, there's just so much to learn there. And when you start out, you're ignorant, which is good because it allows you to take action and not hold yourself up in analysis paralysis. Yeah, definitely with the early hurricane damaged homes, like we would get in and renovation costs would be a little bit higher than expected, but thankfully, like, it was a good time in the real estate market, so we're able to overcome those, and through that learn how to actually manage your renovation, learn how to get bids from contractors, learn how to not pay all of the money up front for a rehab, right? Like paid in draws and maybe just the materials up front so that they're not using that to float other jobs. I'll learn through trial and error. But yeah, and then I think have had setbacks here and there, like cash flow for short-term rentals in the low season. You really got a budget, and set money aside when you're raking it in during the high season, when you think you're a genius and short-term rentals are the best thing ever. And then you hit a low season, you're like, okay, hold on a second. We need to cut some expenses, really get a grasp on our operating expenses and run our whole portfolio more efficiently. So yeah, definitely hiccups along the way, but nothing detrimental so far. And I've always been able to return investor money and give returns and things like that.
How do you handle that planning? What kind of budget do you use? Is there a specific system?
For the renovation?
No, for like the short-term rentals for when you're in your high season and then you do get to that low season, do you use a specific type of accounting? Do you just have a set aside account?
Yeah. So for our first low season, this is where we learned this, because when I was just before getting into boutique hotels, I had 8 short-term rentals that I ran myself, and they're all like 5% interest rates or lower and just higher margin because they're single houses. They have higher ADRs, higher gross revenue per unit. So the margin was, I could still have pretty decent cash flow in the winter. But when you have boutique hotels, they're smaller units, smaller ADRs. And so low season, when you're not bringing in as much money, like your ADR dropping will be a bigger percentage of your gross. So it hits you a little bit harder. And that first season, we didn't account for the seasonality of our income projections. So we brought on 50 units all at once, and they were in various stages of renovation and they came live at different times. And we did annual projections. So we were spot on with what we would make, what we'd spend both on the renovations and the operating expenses. But what we didn't account for was the trough of the low season coinciding with the bottom of all the rehab budgets. So we had this this red dip where got to experience first capital call and tuck and tail and going back to investors to have to bring in a little bit more money, but then you get back into the high season. So that's when we started learn that lesson of making your budgets, especially in short-term rentals, with a seasonality factor, right? Because July might be a 1.7 weighted index and November, December might be like a 0.5 or a 0.6. So you really got to account for where your money's going and when, so you don't get yourself in hot water.
Awesome. And then, so now what are you working on currently? Now let's go into those boutique hotels, because that's really cool. So talk to me about that a little bit.
Yeah. So we had 4 that I owned with my partner that I just sold. 1 I own myself. So we had 5 total, 85 units that we stabilized over last spring, last summer, got all 85 units up and running, and we're doing the operational kind of efficiency things, cutting costs, driving revenue, hiring, building the team and building systems, and sold that business to my partner just we just wanted different things. Good split, all considered, but just wanted to go different directions. I wanted to keep scaling and growing. So sold that business to allow myself the freedom to continue to scale and buy more boutique hotels. So that's what's on the horizon now. Now that we're at the end of wrapping up the transition period, there's some employees that are coming with, so we're building out the new, all the admin stuff, the new accounts, bank accounts, operations accounts, and Slack, and setting up the new listing. So all that stuff that goes on behind the scenes before you get up and running is what we're working on now. And then we'll transition to marketing for new properties, networking with brokers, all that stuff to build out the acquisitions and underwriting deals, and hopefully get something here soon. So the goal is to buy some more boutique hotels, get really nice assets in good destination markets that are newer. I think where our first hotels were like those gateway properties that allowed us to get in for cheaper purchase prices with these C-class assets. I think the goal going forward is to get nicer, newer assets in destination markets. Like we're in by the mountains and the ski resorts right across from the beach. So maybe this time we can get on the beach, or maybe something ski in, ski out. I don't know. I'll have to see what pops up.
Nice. Airbnb and things like the boutique hotels are fantastic because I don't know, I would use it as an excuse to buy a place that I want to go to like for 1 week.
Exactly. Yeah, that's it. I just took a business trip, quote unquote, down to Florida to check out the properties, had a free place to stay, and it's pretty great.
Yeah. And then you write off and you rent it to yourself and rent it to yourself.
Write offs. That's the
making
name
quotes.
of the game, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Now you're taking what you got and you're just continuing on with the boutique hotels, moving in a different direction and scaling it totally.
Yep. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. That's right. And what I'm working on now too, like this in between time, is had a lot of people. I think the natural progression of most short-term rental operators who are growth oriented and want to scale their portfolio is to get into bigger deals. Maybe it's a 4-plex, maybe it's a 8-plex like I jumped into with my first commercial deal, or maybe it's a full-on bigger boutique hotel. So seeing that, there's a lot of interest, I think, in the space. So trying to create a mastermind around that where it can get people in who have those same goals and those same operations to actually scale their short-term rental portfolio. Like I think a lot of times people are just, whether it's management companies, people who do short-term rental management or buy their own properties, they just take whatever they can get, and it might be 3 houses in Gatlinburg and then 3 houses in Panama City Beach, and it's spread out and you really never get the economies of scale. And I think that's what we did really well in our business, is really building in scale. Like we intentionally bought multiple properties in each market so we could have that top line revenue. Like I talked about earlier, it's so important because you can hire out all the team you need. You can invest in the technology and the software and the systems that you need to operate efficiently at scale. Because like me still being an active duty Air Force guy, like I can't, work 40 hours on the management of my business. So I have to build in the systems, hire the people and train them, and then manage those leaders within the company to be able to do whatever that function or role in the business might be. And I think there's a gap between the people who teach short-term rentals, like, hey, here's how you're going to get your next one. But then what's that, like that next scale? Like, how do I buy multi-million-dollar properties to where I can hire the team right away and build in this, really build this nice portfolio with the end in mind of how you actually want your life to be set up. I'm really excited about that. So that's the transition before buying the next real estate deal. So a lot of good things on the horizon.
Good, man. Good. Now, as this is all going on and you're growing and you're increasing the size of your portfolio and you're increasing your wealth, what's one thing that you learned?
Yeah, I think looking back, it always feels really good. And I think we as real estate investors are guilty of this, of getting like asset rich and just reinvesting all of that and then being cash poor. So I think in the beginning, cash flow is really important to get out of your W-2 or build that passive income level of that tier 1 kind of financial independence where you can go your own way, do your own thing. And then you just get to this point where you just reinvest it all, buy more properties and grow and scale. And then you're like, man, I could really use some more cash flow now, even though I've got double, triple, quadruple, whatever the amount of assets. So I think I've learned in hindsight is like to keep that cash flow metric front of mind and make sure that you have a buffer, especially in short-term rentals, right? You want to have your reserves. You want to be able to make it through the low season and not have to skimp through 3 or 4 months out of the year. So I think as you grow, cash flow and also your cash on hand becomes even more important, because especially in like commercial stuff, one big expense could take, like we just put on I think an $80,000 roof in October. So one expense like that could cut out a month or 2 or 3 of cash flow. So you just want to be really intentional about that metric for sure.
Yeah. Something happens, creates a vacancy. The next thing, you're sitting there throwing money at the mortgage while your place is empty, waiting for it to turn back around.
You don't want
again.
to be in that position.
Exactly.
Ask me how I know.
Yeah. It happens to everybody. That was one of the big learning lessons in my company too, where we had that same situation where we wound up with a massive vacancy and we were using our cash on hand, our capital, to, instead of deploying it, we were using it to pay off that mortgage and until it ran out.
And then it just ends up eating up your opportunity cost, and it just puts you in an uncomfortable position. So I think if you can focus on sustaining your cash flow and having enough on hand to weather through whatever that might be, because it might not be like an economic storm. It could just literally be like the condition of your property. You have a big repair, a big water leak. You just want to be prepared for those kind of things, especially when you're raising money and bringing in investor capital. Like you want that extra buffer to just feel safe and secure with your money in the deal and somebody else's who you should treat more important than your money anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. Are you ready to take your real estate investment sky high? Aim High REI is the perfect community for you. Get answers from experienced investors, connect with other motivated individuals, and benefit from valuable resources all in one place. If that sounds like something that interests you, join our amazing network today and we will help elevate your investing journey beyond what you think is possible. Aim High REI is on Facebook. Just click the link in the show notes. The best part is it's completely free to join. So go ahead, click that link right now. Are you interested in getting into real estate, but the fear is stopping you from making the jump? Well, I help new real estate investors overcome the fear of failure and achieve generational wealth through buying rental properties. Go to Instagram @bud.evans and DM me the word coach and find out why we guarantee your first rental property. I will reach out to you directly. Thanks. Now back to the show. Blake, we're going to go into the Soaring Four. The Soaring Four are the same 4 questions that we ask every guest that can help someone just starting out achieve new heights. What is one thing that you use to keep yourself motivated?
One thing that I use is just like writing down the goals, my goals, and reviewing them. So I think, and I've been guilty of this too, a lot of the times you'll write down your goals and then forget about them. And you forget about the why of like why you're doing what you're doing and what you're actually trying to achieve. And you just get caught up in this like perpetual motion of doing and kind of like veer off course. So I saw that early on. I was like, all right, let's get more intentional with these goals and like break it down to a quarterly, weekly, daily basis. And I think that provides the motivation. This is what we're hitting this week. We're going after this full force because this is that priority that's going to push everything else forward. And then just like putting yourself in that seat of the mental space of visualizing it, of being there in the moment and feeling what it's going to be like when you get there and using that motivation. All right. Cause then it hypes you up and then you're that much more inspired to keep pushing and go through that grind and go through the suck that entrepreneurship can be sometimes. So yeah, that's what I like to do.
Awesome. So I'm just going to follow that up and flip a couple questions around because I want to know what you use to keep yourself on track with those goals.
Yeah. So I use the intention journal and I've been using these for 2.5, 3 years by Brandon Turner. And that's what I talk about there is like you have your big overarching goals, and then you want to break that into your quarterly 1, 2, or 3 big things that you need to accomplish that quarter to push forward towards your long-term vision. And then you've got like your weekly and your daily action plans. And in this journal, what I like about it is it breaks it down by hour. So then I can really time block out my time and just visualizing how my day set up, sitting down in the morning and writing out my goals, writing out what I'm grateful for. That helps me stay on track. And if I didn't have one of these, I would probably be all over the place. So hopefully I just made some sales for Brandon on the journal.
Yeah. I'm just sitting here looking at mine.
Oh, you got one too?
I use the Michael Hyatt version, but yeah, same basic breakdown. It's annual, quarterly. Each book is quarterly. Then it breaks it down into monthly, weekly, and hourly. Yeah. I'll be honest, man, that's a game changer.
Yeah. It just puts everything right in front of you and keeps you focused on what you're actually doing and what you need to do next. So many times you're just like, what do I do to achieve this big goal? It feels like it's the whole analogy of how do you eat an elephant? It's one bite at a time. You just got to take the small wins and stack them up. And then pretty soon you're like, oh, just bought that next boutique hotel like I was trying to do. I'm like, oh shit, we just bought another one. So it's like you got to do the actions. And I think that helps keeps your life and everything organized towards the actions that are actually going to get you where you need to be. So then you can push off the other stuff. I don't need to, go to some event that is not real estate related or whatever, because it's just not going to be the right crowd of people or whatever it might be. A million different scenarios there.
Yeah. So the next question, what is one thing that you learned that completely changed your mindset?
One thing I learned that completely changed my mindset. I think for me in these past 7-8 months is not just prioritizing all the things in the business that you need to do to grow and to make more money and scale and all that kind of stuff, but really just like closer to home, like the people around you, especially like I'm married. So my relationship with my wife, Nicole, has been a really important one for me. And I think for a good amount of time while we were scaling the boutique hotel business, like that was my main focus. And that's all I did. Like I would wake up at 4:30, work before I went into the Air Force office, work during lunch on the business, come home at night and work on the business again until I crashed at 10 or 11 and woke up at 4 and did it all again. And I think I prided myself in that work ethic. I was like, I'll just work as hard as I need to get everything done. But then you push the people away that are close to you that kind of help keep you on track through those times and make it all worth it. So I think when I realized that you should treat your relationships, like your key relationships, like your spouse, for example, prioritize that like you would your business. So now for the past 7, 8, 9 months, whatever it's been, I went to a mastermind and got this in my head, and like treat your relationships or your marriage like your business, and track your intentional time spent like alone with your spouse, phone down, like not answering business calls or Slack messages or whatever it is, like plan date nights and invest time into that relationship. And I feel like we've been stronger now than we ever have been through that intentional time spent, because when you pour into them, like they pour back into you. And just like learning the love languages of what actually resonates with them. So yeah, I think that's changed my life in a big way, is just prioritizing relationships and making sure that at home, like the marriage is like the number one thing. And if I had all the success in the world, I bought every boutique hotel in the world, I owned them all, but lost my relationship, lost my marriage through that, I don't think it would be worth it. So
Yeah, it would definitely take something away. As a matter of fact, right after this, we're doing dinner and a couple of Netflix shows. So
I love it.
Yeah, man. Now, the last question is, what is one thing you'd change if you had to start all over?
Ooh, this is a hard one. I think going back when I first started, I probably bought everything I could at the time. Like bought a lot more short-term rentals in 2019 and 2020. But speaking of 2020, hindsight is always 2020. So, you can always kind of dwell on that. But I think going back, I would just try to find like a better balance, because now I'm at the point where I feel like I'm much more efficient in my business with kind of delegating out the things that I don't need to be doing. And that at the beginning, I thought that I needed to do everything. Like I needed to be the one to push and to grind and to get it all done. But I think as you scale and grow a business and start to hire really good people that are good at what they do, they're often more capable to take on extra tasks, more responsibility than you think they are, but they're ready for it. And they're just sitting there like, hey, give me some more stuff to do. And then when you do, you're often like pleasantly surprised of what they can do, and allows you to focus on the more high leverage tasks in your business that push everything forward. So I think I would have outsourced and delegated sooner if I could go back and talk to my younger self and be like, hey man, you don't need to do everything yourself. That's why you built the team.
We are, man. We're doing this to talk to newer people who are just starting out. And that, man, you have been just dropping nuggets of wisdom this entire time. So thank you for that. Yeah. And that's exactly what we're trying to do.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's probably like the hardest thing to do when you're starting out, and like you haven't, it really is like a muscle, like going to the gym. Like you have to flex like your outsourcing and delegation muscles, and it's going to feel uncomfortable. You're going to make mistakes. For me, at the beginning, was hiring 5 and 6 and 7 VAs and not knowing how to properly train them and get them involved in everything. And I was like, oh, it's the VA's fault. But really it was my fault, because I wasn't good enough at giving them work and having them work within the business. If you're hearing this, it's your fault. You can get better though. We're proof.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
That's actually something that I teach. But now I got to ask you this. Have you noticed that being in the military makes you better at real estate, and being in real estate makes you better in the military?
That's a hard one. I think the second half is maybe not in like real estate better in the military, because that's become like my baby, like the business and just like the passion, and the Air Force job is so much different. But I think in some aspects, like for sure on the delegation piece that we just talked about, like as a company grade officer, like a lot kind of funnels down to me. But there's also like in a big program like I'm in, there's help and experience and people who really know stuff, that there's a lot of like cross flow of information there, and kind of learn from the business how to use like the different levels of expertise of what other people might know. Our marketing person might know how to make a better email campaign to our guests to drive more direct bookings. And our bookkeeper obviously knows how to track expenses better than I do. So just like leaning on those people to get their inputs, I think has helped me a ton. And just trying to stay like, present and focused when I'm at the Air Force job. So yeah, I think there's some cross flow, but probably more lessons from real estate that I bring into the Air Force more.
Yeah, I agree with that, man. Blake Dailey. Thank you very
That's right.
much. I really do appreciate it.
Maybe
Man,
we
I
could
don't
get
know.
Blake Lively on now. That would be cool. If you get her, can I come back and we could do like a bit
Absolutely.
again?
Sure. Absolutely. Without question. Honestly, I'm one of those closet TMZ guys, and I watch like that stuff on YouTube and whatnot. I don't know why. I
I'm not
have
afraid
no
to admit it.
interest
Like,
in
I'm
them.
a big Gossip Girl fan. OXO Gossip Girl, where she was the star. Like, me and my wife watched that one together. So I'd have to bring up some Gossip Girl questions.
Yeah. So I don't know why that got into my head. I have your name written right in front of me and still said it. It's
It's
just,
literally on the screen. It's all good though. It's all good.
yeah, that was hysterical. I'm going to leave that in. I'm not going to edit that out at all.
Yeah,
I
please
just
do. I
it's
think that
funny.
was a good riff. No, that'll be,
Yeah.
hopefully it produces a little laugh there to start the show.
All right. Listen, I thank you for your time. And for those of you listening on the podcast or watching on YouTube with my red face, aim high.